Hi everybody, Lynn Cox here, clinical hypnotherapist. I work with women to more naturally and quickly overcome the residual impacts of domestic violence relationships as well as experiencing childhood abuse. Anyway, I want to get on and talk about I'd put up a couple of stories with some words definitions and said how about getting from there to here. And to be really honest with you, I didn't even like putting these words up, but I'm going to talk about this. The word, and I'm referencing I pulled some things into a document on my desktop, so I'm looking at that. I put up the word humiliated and humiliating. It's a transitive verb. So the definition here I'm going to read out. So it says to reduce, in brackets, someone to a lower position in one's own eyes or others' eyes, to make someone ashamed or embarrassed, mortify, and then they give an example. Hoped they wouldn't humiliate themselves in their next game, accused her of humiliating him in public, and feel so humiliated. So, humiliation, the reason I'm talking about this word is because I've heard this word as well as this word said in other ways, and this can be a common way that sometimes people feel emotions and ways they describe their experience, their feelings related to those past experiences. Feeling humiliated, feeling, and then there's some other ones that are similar here, embarrassed, mortified, shame. Brené Brown I believe she calls herself a shame researcher. It's the same thing. It's synonymous. Indignity, disgrace, dishonor, degradation, loss of pride. I mean, just even as I'm saying these words and you think of these words, just think about how they make you feel. They feel so heavy. And then put down, blow to one's pride, slap in the face, smack in the face, kick in the teeth, brush off, disesteem, just, really, really terrible ways. These are heavy, poisonous emotions to feel. But the fact is these types of feelings are feelings and emotions, and the emotions that are driving beliefs that a lot of people who have experienced those situations do feel. And one thing I will say is recovering from those feelings and those past experiences, one thing that's actually not helpful is to continuously discuss all the ways in which you felt humiliated or all of the circumstances surrounding the humiliation. It actually works to keep those, we'll call them pathways and beliefs, really, really alive. And I'm not talking about having a disassociative um, or or inability to look at truth. It is very, very important to look at some difficult truths, to recognize that you felt those ways in certain situations, depending on if you were a child who was abused or experienced CSA, or an adult. And often, and I did put up another stat about how there are high statistics indicating that people who are abused as children, particularly CSA and physical abuse, women end up in violent relationships as adults. There is definitely a connection there. That's why this is, it's more of the reason why it's so important. But looking at the hard truths. So if you were a child, that's one thing, and there's really nothing you can do as an adult. And after exiting and choosing to exit a domestic violence situation, some looking at some hard truths and being able to address what was it in you, what was it in your belief system that kept you in that situation, or that kept you going back into the cycle of going back before you finally exited. Because it is a cold, hard truth that there is something that needs to be looked at there. Some people may not be happy to hear that, I can say this because I speak from experience and did have to go through that process of honest truths with myself before I actually recovered. But continuously talking, years of talk therapy around this is instance of humiliation, and then that happened, and this was so degrading, and it's like being in a washing, spinning cycle. It's not helpful if what you truly do want is to feel and experience the opposite. And words and language are very important because our mind only responds to words and pictures, and the words create the pictures. And these strong emotions are literally the foundation of our belief. And so, what I liked to read about this, what I thought, like, oh, this is the good news part that is really worth mentioning, is that humiliating as a transitive verb. Do you know what a transitive verb is? This means they're verbs that take on an object. And I'm again reading this definition. So which means they include the receiver. Very, very important. The receiver of the action in the sentence. So in the example, this is kind of a positive example. She gives a gift. The verb gives is transitive, and a gift is the direct object because it receives the action, a gift of what's being given. So if we look at this from the perspective of humiliation, one thing to keep in mind is, and this is a lot, you cannot have a gift that you refuse to accept. You can't have a gift that you refuse to accept. So think about that from the perspective of feeling humiliated or being like a victim, feeling like a victim. You cannot have victimized. That would be a transitive verb as well. So you cannot have a gift that you choose not to accept. This is very important. It is very, very true. And if you want to experience, if you want to feel better, if you want to feel better, if you want to be more joyful, feel less anxiety, feel less anxious, feel more in control of your life, feel like you know how to have boundaries and respect and love and care for yourself, you cannot have a gift you don't accept. So that language about, and I even don't even like to say the word, it's a rather ugly word. So let's look at some other words in other language. What's the opposite of that? What is the opposite of that? You know, how about words instead like honor, make proud, elevate, exalt, elate, you know, unashamed, bold, confident, honored. What are some other ones? Brazen, dignified. What does a dignified or composed what is somebody who's dignified and composed? What do they think about themselves? What do they believe about themselves? How do they navigate through the world? What kind of relationships do they have? This is kind of a way that we can look at this. So there is a way to get from those emotions of feeling full of shame. I have heard a lot of these words: shame, regret, embarrassment, like people wanted to hide. When people are in domestic abusive situations, there is a lot of dishonesty because they often won't let people around them know because they're really, really embarrassed. And these are all things that you can recover from. But talking about them and all the circumstances surrounding them over and over and over again is not helpful in the long term if you truly want to have the opposite experience and have the opposite perspective of yourself. And it really does truly shift. And one of the fastest ways to shift and change that is you really need to get down to what are the emotions that are driving the beliefs? What are the beliefs that you have? This is why therapies like hypnotherapy, rapid transformational therapy, where we go back in and we figure out the why, the where, the when, the how. Why is it that you feel so ashamed and humiliated, and why is this why is this thematically repetitively coming up in your life? And then you can actually um, interrupt those beliefs and change those emotions. But there has to be the recognition, there has to be the want, and there has to be the desire. But it is actually amazing how quickly, and I talk about this as soon as the log is kicked, how the river can flow. These things can happen more rapidly than I believe traditional old school types of therapies would have us believe. Um, it's more of our natural state, I think, to feel dignified and to respect ourselves and be able to have mutually respectful, caring relationships. I think that everybody is very, very deserving of that. And I think that's more of our natural state. I don't spend a whole lot of time trying to dissect or analyze why would he do that, why would he say that. Again, that's kind of a no-win game if you actually really want to recover. I put up another post recently, and I've talked about this before as well, the non-contact principle, which if you're coming out of physical violence and abuse, that's kind of the best option. And in would you even want to understand why and how a person would aim to either physically hurt or humiliate somebody else? I think that's pretty dark, and I'm more focused on people who want to recover and instead feel like they see and know their value, and like those core emotions and beliefs flip to the opposite of the H word. I'm just going to call it the H word because I think it's not a light and energizing word to use. We don't disregard or we don't ignore that there were realities and truths. Yet there is a way to move past it quicker. And it is getting into what are those beliefs, what are those strong emotions and those beliefs that were lodged in there that are continuing to run in a pattern uninterrupted until they're interrupted while you're in a hypnotic, basically alpha or theta brainwave state. And then you can have some real significant and more rapid recovery. So my dog is about to really yelp here for his DINNER. And on that note, everybody have a wonderful day. I'll be on soon. Bye for now.